the gap between these videos gets longer as life gets in the way. But here we are. I came across something I thought you might enjoy going through with me. And I've been doing these to really cover sort of 6-month periods in the life. So looking at the sort of January to June period of Gilsoft in 1984. And I thought it would be nice to base it around the new catalogue that came out. And to that end, I've got a scanned copy of it, and thought it might be nice to have a quick look through and dive into some of the things we were doing and what was happening at that time, because the world was a very different place. We got a lot of coverage in multiple medias, and I think you'll enjoy the journey along those couple of months as we suddenly started to grow. First of all, I'm going to look at some of the excellent press coverage we got in the magazines, which really helped to grow Quill and Gilsoft indeed. And this one's the 3rd issue of Micro Adventure from January 1984. We are mentioned as the Quill in depth on page 9 there. Tony Bridge reviewing the Quill. So this sort of Micro Adventure was a great magazine for those who were into text and other types of adventures. Ran for quite some time, and they were very supportive of us. So he gives a pretty comprehensive look at the actual game with a almost 2-page spread, other than a half-page advert. He says basically he foresees many highly imaginative adventures coming onto the market in the future, and at $40.95, although the price seems rather high, it's worth every penny. And it's mentions the fact that we illustrate it with Diamond Trail what can be achieved. So a really good, basically a person without any programming can construct an adventure. Imagination is the only limiting factor. Quill rates 10 out of 10. Will be an indispensable aid to any adventure writer. And the fact that we only need to be mentioned, again, he picks up all the key points in his summation, which is really good. We also took an advert out in Micro Adventure quite a lot. I think this is the older one before we had the new style of Quill drawn. I'm not sure who found these. They look like clip art. They may have been done. We were starting to design a studio by now on Barry Road, run by a gentleman called Paul. He was probably laying this advert up for us and providing us the script type work. It looks a bit more than we would have done in the house. Dealer inquiries welcome, so available from many computer shops nationwide, so we're obviously starting to get some distribution as well. Also on this, on page 47, you'll find an advert for Dennis Through the Drinking Glass, which of course was written with Quill. So we're already seeing adverts for games written with it. It doesn't actually say in the advert, does it? Oh yeah, it does. Using them with Quill from Gilsoft. There we go, so we're even credited in the advert. And there's also an advert in here somewhere for 8th Day. 8th Day, level 9, I've obviously got a page in here. But 8th Day, which is Mike White, this initial game, he isn't using Quill on this. This is one which was written in BASIC. So I did take it apart to make sure it wasn't. Lots of magazines were covering us. This is Which Micro, the February 1984, and this sheet is actually a sample sheet sent by the magazine to us to show us the February review. Hope we like it, in case we didn't buy a copy of the magazine. Signed by Martin. And again, they obviously had the older artwork because that would have been the review copy they were sent before Christmas, because obviously being an early one. But again, they seem to like it. Not a software to buy lightly about being prepared. It's a fair coverage and says just need to acknowledge it. So it's expensive, but for price you get the manual, so it gives you quite a lot about it, and design adventures for 16k as well, which is an important point at this time. So again, seems to be a good bit of coverage for us. Can't hurt. The other thing about that time, we've got there's an advert here in Personal Computer News for the Quill, similar sort of style to the other one. This is slightly later. I think this is March. I'm trying to think which one it is. Yeah, so it's this one with MSX and a pull-out bit on the Auric Atmos, I think. But again, we're in the page 52. There we are. We've got a Build Your Own Adventure, Bob Chappell. Again, I think this was one that was a fairly large. Next page, is it? There we go. So page 52 of the magazine, not of the PDF. Nice bit of artwork drawn by someone. I love it. And again, quite a full cover of what it is, how the diagnostics works, and a good verdict overall. So pretty much 4 or 5 cassettes for everything they're looking at. So you can't fault the coverage we're getting, really, can you? Of course, one thing to note in this advert is the stop press, available soon for the Commodore 64. So, which meant that by January, February, we were already working on a Commodore 64 version, or Graham would have been, soon using the BBC for cross-assembly using the AID assembler. And we look at that at a later date, as my BBC is currently non-working, so it has to be repaired first. But I'd like to show you what we moved on from 46502 cross-development, our first delve into that sort of approach rather than using a second machine for development. Of course, there are loads of adverts in the various magazines, quite well documented at places like Spectrum Computing. The number of mentions was phenomenal. We could hardly keep up with them, probably weren't even aware of all of them. But of course, we also had the new livery by now, which was starting to filter through. And Dad in Hawthorne Road on the dining table there took some photographs of the new boxes as they were being. They came flat, and you could just fold them over, so they're quite easy to assemble. And you put the cassette inside the cardboard box. They look lovely. I think probably they're some lovely photographs. They were shiny, but not quite this shiny. The sun was very bright that day, by the looks of it. But they are, you can see the quality of the production on the books and the boxes that we were shipping, which was really nice. Now, I have got one cardboard boxed Quill left, which I'm going to show you now in a video, but bear with me, it was folded flat and used on our display stands with some Velcro on the back, so I've had to put it back together, and it's starting to look a little bit sorry for itself. But let's take a quick look at what the unboxing experience for a Quill like this would have been now. So this is the box I keep it safe in. As safe as it can be. And as you can see, it's a little creased. But it doesn't look quite as good as they do in the photographs. But they're incredibly unusual to see them in any kind of condition, really, because they just weren't a very long-term packaging. So basically, you've got the folded box, which has got a place to put the manual in. This is a Spectrum one, obviously. The inside has failed slightly, but you've got basically a bit of a retainer here that folds out. Holds the cassette square into the box in its case. They obviously, as I said, they were delivered flat. We fold them out like that. The same with the cardboard box, would just be folded out into a piece and then glued in corners like that, and the piece put in. It didn't take too long to assemble them, and when we packed them up, we had a thin strip of cardboard that went round the outside, then fold over and roll over the two sides, and they would be nice and stiff in the in. So obviously the cassette is professionally duplicated as well, and you've got the little inlay which still says copyright 1983, and design from the design studio, and mainline graphics. Oh, maybe that's actually who drew the original artwork. I don't know. Could be. Oh, that's a lead that I've not come across before. We may need to have a look into that. But the obviously goes over. It's a little bit mouldy for this age. If this is an original one, it fits in there. And as I say, the manual in all its glory. With this is a Spectrum version, a Serial C manual actually, which is a newer one. I wasn't sure how many C manuals we had in cardboard boxes. Actually, I thought they would have been A manuals, but I'd have to have a look at that. This might have got mixed up with one from an A Spectrum. I'll have to have a little look at which ones we got in boxes. There we go. So that is how the boxed Quill looked as it was. Would have been on racks on the shelves in WH Smith's and other retailers. There we go, there's the mainline graphics as well. As I said, we were getting a lot of coverage in magazines, and Personal Computer World, March 1984. This one has got the British Microcomputing Awards, And these are the final things for who's in it from a judging panel. I'm not sure who actually put us forward for it, but it was in the Thames Television's Database Home Software Award. So you can see Quill here from Gilsoft up against a range of things, including Simon's Basic and a view file and WordWise for the BBC, a word processor I actually used back in the day. There's quite a few of the different Computer Answers Creative Software Awards. So Ant Attack, hey, great. The Hobbit, of course, from Melbourne House. Lisa's operating system, oh, that's interesting. And Valhalla, we'll come on to that. What else we got? So Game of the Year Awards is going to be The Hobbit, Ant Attack, Bugaboo. That was from Spanish software house sold by Quicksilver, I'm sure, wasn't it? Of course, which I like playing. And again, Valhalla from Legend. The Colour Speech Synthesizer in the Peripheral of the Year. What else we got? The Prism VTX 5000 modem for getting online. Dot Matrix printer, yeah, the Epson, and the Torch disc pack, the CPM for the what was the basic BBC, wasn't it? It was an alternate. And again, Valhalla in category 9 as well. So there's lots of stuff in here. The Lisa, this personal computer, Commodore 64, Model 100. Good selection of stuff. Anyway, we'd obviously been invited to go along to the dinner. That was with a letter informing us in early May, I think, that we were up for an award and that we could book some tickets if we wanted. So they sent us some stuff. I can't remember whether we rang them or... but here we are. There's the inquiry, yeah, we must have done. So we'd reserved, to say, 4 tickets. So we're on a table of 8, I think. So this is our receipt then. So by early March, we'd had our 4 tickets back. It was to be held in, Garden Hotel, wasn't it? I think it was. Where was it being held? Can't remember now. There we are, the Royal Garden Hotel in Kensington in London on March the 28th. So we went up as a group of 4, so that would be myself, my father, my mother, and we took a great family friend, Peter Jones, who was actually our GP and one of our games testers. He was a big fan of that Valhalla as well, so he played that quite a lot. A lovely bloke, really erudite. So we were sat opposite. On the other half of our table of 8 was some people from Scion. I can't remember who they were, but of course by then they'd have been aware that their Quill used the same name as ours, because the QL had been launched by Sinclair in January. So that turned into a bit of a discussion over it when we went round introducing ourselves. Now this helped our trademark case later, but Peter quite quipped as they were asked what he did for the company, that he was the chauffeur and polished the Rolls Royce. So we had a good day. It was great. I know there was a sort of free bar, and Peter discovered it was serving single malt whiskies, which he liked. And he ran across a guy from Legend for produced Valhalla. And when asked what he did for him, I think his tale had been that he worked for the Inland Revenue, was looking at taxation on video games. So that put a guy in a bit of a quake, I think, because Pete had found a few bugs in the software. That sort of came to bite us a bit when we were Gilsoft International Limited and VAT registered. We actually had a VAT inspection that discovered that there should be VAT on books that were printed with computer programs and games, which our accountant said there was no guidance on, but sure enough, and they said, we'll issue some guidance, and that issued guidance said that had to happen, so they left with a cheque for unpaid VAT on books we'd had printed to go with our software. So there we go. But that was a day out in London for us, and I think we stayed the night as well and came back the next day, so went up by train. So it was a good day out. Don't think we won the award. I'd be interested to find out who did win those awards. Maybe I don't have a copy of this Personal Computer World, May 1984, so I got off of archive.org, just thought find out what the results were. And indeed, this one, which is exclusive review of the Amstrad CPC, the Sinclair Beta they call it, on the front. On page 135, we have hopefully here we are, page 135, British Microcomputing Oscars, so ACT. But here's the the table. So we got the final results for Personal Computer Microcomputer of the Year was HT Apricot. Nice choice. VLI Computer People Business Micro Award, Apricot again. Micro Decisions Business Software, Lotus 123. Not a bad thing, I suppose. What Micro on BBC Micro Award, BBC Model B and the Sinclair Spectrum as joint winners. Okay. Computer Answers Creative Software Award, Lisa's Operating System. Again, not undeserved, quite different, revolutionary. Game of the Year, Valhalla. Well, okay, great, well done. And it was a good game, actually. Sunday Times Special Commendations, Libra from Early Bridge Braille Systems. Okay. Personal Computer News Peripheral of the Year, the Prism VTX 5000. Of course, it opened the world up for Spectrum users. Thames Television Database Software, the one we were up against, apparently it was concurrent CPM and Lotus 123. Well, okay, we didn't stand much of a chance against those, did we, really? And the Sunday Times Award for British Innovation, the Apricot again. Wow, swept the board, didn't they? Well done, Apricot. About this time, we'd started getting Park Crescent, which we'll talk about in a minute, although we were still using Hawthorne Road as the business address. This is quite sad and urgent overdue account statement balance. We had to send a few of those. People were notoriously slow at paying, I think, back in the day. And some plain letterhead, which we were using, proprietary H.J. Gilbert's. He was still a sole trader at that time. And of course, we'd started commissioning proper artwork, and we'd put Paul at the design studio in Barry onto getting some more, some real improvements in our packaging. And this is a sample sheet of some Spectrum covers, seeing the artwork from Terry Greer, a cracking selection of them. This was our old games tape, Mongoose and Bear Island. I don't think we ever had new artwork for Reverse Iron Poker Dice. We were still listing it, you'll see in the catalogue when we go through it. But a nice new cover for 3D Maze of Gold as well. And I think this Timeline of Tasks is a lovely looking bit of a drawing. And we'll talk about Who Would Be King afterwards. It was another product we started selling. We'll have a look at that as we look through the catalogue. So new artwork coming, new lookout, new cassette insets. Things were starting to look quite posh, I think. So yeah, I got a Timeline and Task, one of my favourite pictures, I think. So it looks good with the new, and we're of course getting the tapes professionally produced as well. So they're being duplicated and labelled with some better labelling now than we'd ever had. So we're starting to go up market. So let's take a look at a little bit about what we've done in Park Crescent. We had to move the desks which was installed in the rented office downtown into the computer room there, and then we set up the rest of it as offices. I've got some photographs. I'm not sure whether we've looked at them before, but we'll have a quick look through them now as we just to see how it goes. This photograph is obviously taken a year later, but it was pretty much how the office was for quite a few years. That's my mum Pam and my aunt Pam doing some dispatch of product by the looks of it. And there's our packing room at the back, which packing up all the boxes. So and the big post sacks, which we had these like very quick fold over cardboard pieces. You just fold them over and run a roller over them to seal the edges. They were a packaging system that Dad found, which was really good. You can tell this is probably 1985-ish because we've got some BMA from 1985 because we were up and we were winners in the 1985 Micro Awards as well, I think. That's my dad sat at his desk. Like I say, a little bit later, but very similar to what it was. And then we've got some photographs taken, which will be for a thing we'll see, which we think came out early in 1985. But again, very similar layout probably. You can see our Commodore 64 year with our printer with Andy Morton looking at, obviously been doing some testing, our work in the office with me. My Uncle Barry with our Sanyo, which we bought probably later in the 84. We'll talk about that. There is a video on the channel about it, which you might want to look up, but we will go over that and what we used it for. Obviously Graham with a copy of the Quill, and you can see our daisy wheel printer that went with the Sanyo, and our BBC, and it's just twin disk drives, which we're going to talk about. Again, Dad sat at his desk, so this is Crash Top 50 for August 1984. No, we'll have to look that up afterwards. And this is Hugh Jones, who did a lot of the loading screen artwork. He did most of them, especially for the gold collection, which we'll be coming on to later. And again, my cousin and his dad working on the accounts. You can just see the other office behind and the packing room in no, it's the corridor into the computer room there. You can see looking down. So not a very good photo of my mum, but again with the Sanyo. And there's me sat at the BBC developing something. I don't know what, but and so you can see some stuff in the back. Okay, there's Graham and I holding up products. So this was definitely the year after. This would have been 85-ish. So this was no, late. It was done by the end of 84, so it was probably taken in December or January of this year. So not too far out. It looks like we've got an Oric Atmos there as well. So and definitely micro drives. So yeah, we got a good selection of machines, and you see a big rack of packaged illustrators. Still using a cardboard box Quill, but we've got the new plastic packing for the illustrator, which we'll look at later. So there we go. That's a little bit about what we were working our off by pretty much March. Yeah, end of March, perhaps May. We set up to work out and given up the office down in the that was down there. Those desks that you can see there, they were actually originally installed in the office downtown and just moved wholesale into the computer room. Here's a little bit more stationery that's quite important. As of course you know, in the Quill manuals, we offered that if people sent in a game, we would evaluate it for possible sale. So this form would have been used to assess how good the games were. Recently, the game Barsack the Dwarf, I was contacted by the nephew of one of the original authors asking whether we still had anything relating to it, documentation that would been sent in one of our envelopes. And here it is. So it's on some lined paper, the Adventures of Barsack the Dwarf from Mr. Napolitano, P. Napolitano. It came with a test. We'd obviously circled each one as we did the steps. And then came with some wonderful maps. I'm not going to ruin it all for you by showing you everything, but some wonderfully drawn maps, pages and pages of them. And of course, at the end, then we've also got a, as we like to get, a hint sheet. This looks like it was typed up by us. Not sure, but maybe supplied by them and then typed up by us. So I think that's it was really nice to be able to return that to them, and a copy of Barsack the Dwarf on cassette. So they were over the moon with that. The magazine coverage continued with pretty much a front page of Crash based on adventures, which is amazing, really. The May 1984 has got this wonderful picture, and it's the eyes reflect the What Now cursor, which is great. Obviously the right way around for you to be able to read it. And dripping gold, Gilsoft's the Quill Spawns monsters. So and the adventure trail is on the front as well. So that's it's a lovely cover, and you'll find that in the index we've got the adventure trail page 95, and page 49 the drips gold, the Quill. So if we look at page 49, it is a multi-page spread about our program, the Gold collection, which is, it covers the Quill itself with a review of it, which is a little bit later than other people have covered it, but far more fundamental, the average utility, care and concentration, and they go all the way down through it about how it works. So it's a multi-page picture of how to use the system, and it's the Quill is massively worthwhile investment, since it's one of the few programs on the market which will give lasting satisfaction. At $14.95, it's almost ludicrously underpriced for what it does, and more importantly, what it allows others to do. And he mentions that a number of adventures already available with the Quill, Dennis of the Drinking Glass, and that Gilsoft are marketing a number of the gold collections. So, and they're going to take a look at those as well, and indeed they do. And they start off with a review of those games, including one, Barsack the Dwarf, which we looked at just now. Of criticism, he says of the four, this was the least interesting. He thought, which is a shame, but they were all good. We picked them, but we weren't just getting, this was the May issue, but in April we also got a bit of coverage on the BBC Micro Show. And I found a tape with some audio for it, which I'm going to play, and hopefully will come out as we're talking now.
The following recording is an extract from the BBC radio programme The Micro Show, broadcast on April the 1st, 1984.
That was my dad.
Now, we've looked at plenty of adventure games for micros in the past. This week, Mike Evans looks at a way to make your dreams come true by writing your very own custom-built adventure.
Adventures have been around since before the computer. It all started with an enormous program in Fortran, written on a mainframe computer by Crowther and Woods, and aptly named The Original Adventure. Since the introduction of home micros, this blockbuster has been translated for most of the popular machines. Following on from this, Scott Adams, Brian Howarth and many others have provided a virtually endless supply of games, with a variety of themes and scenarios matched only by the proliferation of their authors. We've had Dungeons and Dragons of many breeds, little green men on mirrors, philosophers, pharaohs and Franklin. One wrong move and something drops from above, or creature rips your head off. Well, what makes a good adventure? It's a combination of the originality of the programmer, his imagination, and his ability to write a program that presents the player with a fast response to his directions or instructions. To maintain the interest of the player, the plot needs to be well constructed, and the locations interesting and convincingly described. There are actually two ways of writing and coding computer adventures. The slightly easier method is to use BASIC, in which case the program can be written sequentially, that's to say, in a set of program blocks with local conditions and instruction requirements. However, this still needs a fair amount of programming skill, and has its main disadvantage in being quite slow to respond. The second method is to write in machine code. This is fast, almost instantaneous in its reply, but of course is far more difficult to use, and requires a thorough knowledge of computing techniques. However, the Barry-based firm Gilsoft, proving that small is often best, have produced a remarkable adventure generator program, the Quill, written by Graham Yandel, which takes virtually all the hard work out of adventure writing. It's been around for some time and has been justifiably acclaimed by all the major magazines and reviewers. The Quill is supplied with a very comprehensive manual, which by way of an example adventure takes you through the various menus and condition options. Having written your adventure scenario and specified objects, locations and so on, the Quill will provide you with a complete adventure which runs totally independently of the editor. If you consider your efforts to be marketable, then Gilsoft only require mention of the fact that the Quill was used to write it. So if you think you have the imagination to write a good adventure, then at just under £15, the Quill is one of the most useful and usable utilities available. Gilsoft themselves have recently released a set of games written using the Quill under the title The Gold Collection. 2, Magic Castle and Diamond Trail, were available soon after the introduction of the Quill, but experience and practice certainly show in Mindbender, Africa Gardens, Spy Plane and the other new games in the series. Mindbender is a double-sided tape. It's a two-part adventure, and written by Barry Exile Paul Stiles. It's very well written, with a humorous opening sequence. When you eventually answer the phone, a disembodied voice says, "Croeso Gymru." The rest of the adventure is peppered with entertaining messages. If you ask for your score, you're given the reply, England 0, Wales 0. But there's much, much more to come. Africa Gardens is the most eerie, atmospheric and disturbing adventure I've ever come across. A familiar opening leaves you stranded outside a run-down hotel.
Welcome to Africa Gardens. I do hope you enjoy your stay. Mr. Robinson insists on your every comfort in the hope that you extend your visit. Indeed, Mr. Robinson hopes that you may be among his many guests who feel they can never leave.
On entering the hotel, hints of dark forebodings are everywhere. When tempted into the dining room by the smell of roast meat, you find...
The diners have been and gone, leaving their debris behind. Some roasted meat they left looks tempting, but it doesn't seem to be the meat of any animal you know.
And when you discover a candle and venture into a wrong room on the first floor.
The room you find yourself in is covered with what looks like human death masks. The pale stone coloring of the faces changes as you look. Their complexion gets more lifelike, and as it does, the faces open their eyes. Their cold stare settles on you. They begin to whisper obscenities. Their voices get louder to form a demonic incantation.
Then you die. Well, Africa Gardens is written by Tom Davis from Plantwood Major and actually uses limited graphics. Try it if you dare. If you like ITV's Spitting Image series, then the political caricatures in Dennis Through the Drinking Glass are a must. It's a new approach to adventure games and comes from Roger Thomas of Application Software. Set in the role of Dennis Thatcher, you must first escape from number 10 without Maggie catching you. a difficult enough task, but in order to remain tipsy, you must constantly top up with a tot or two. Without giving too much away, when, having eventually got out, I became inextricably entangled in Dennis Healy's eyebrows, it was lucky I had a lawnmower with me. Every location is described in rhyming verse, and although slightly irreverent, is great fun and very difficult. Commodore owners will be pleased to know that the Quill will be shortly available for their machine. Well done, Gilsoft. It's nice to see a small Welsh company doing so well. Chris.
Well, that's lovely, isn't it? Really nice review. And I was quite impressed to find that tape with my dad introducing the what was on the tape. That's what makes this sort of research worthwhile, isn't it? So it was getting a lot of good coverage in magazines and on radio as well. And we were even getting coverage in newspapers across the country as well. This is a review from News Northeast, I believe it's called. And it's Adventure Club by Gary Marsh, talking about the Quill. And it's available $40.95 for the Commodore 64 on Spectrum and $16.95 for the Amstrad Nordic Atmos, available very soon apparently. So that was, I was quite surprised at that. And it's also got a review of some of 8th Day's software. So this is definitely May of '84. Then we must have been very close, May 9th, unless it's from 1985. I don't know. It's still our early stuff, look. So we were obviously planning on doing it for Amstrad and Oric fairly early on in '84. So going back to the catalogue of June 1984 that I found earlier, this has obviously got the brand new artwork from Terry Greer. And we'll take a look at that original artwork at some point, as I have managed to find that. This is the sort of iconic work he did now, incorporating the idea for the illustrator as well, but in a black and white form. So we had that artwork ready and incoming by June of '84 to be able to use it here for this catalogue. The inside is still printed. It's now available for the Commodore 64, the Quill. So we were definitely shipping Commodore 64 Quill by June. Fairly standard lineup that you can see here is Made of Gold, Mongoose Bear Island, still selling reverse iron poker dice. Hidden City we were selling, obviously, because it was from written by me. We were also Arithmetic 1 from Tawny we were selling. We've talked about Cecil and HAL and the visual processors. Obviously the timeline of tasks are now being moved into this section with we'll see why it's classed as adventures now, and the Gold Collection plus Magic Castle, Diamond Trail included in there. You've got the Quill itself, for some reason not showing the C64 version. The rest of obviously very rapidly available in the June catalogue time. So here we have the Commodore 64 version of the Quill in its plastic packaging. Getting a little bit worse for wear now. One of these was obviously display, it had the Velcro on it, but these plastic packs do last a little bit better. This has actually got both cassette, which has got the black labelling rather than the white one, and floppy disk, and of course has got the Commodore 64 manual in it, which is Quill with no serial number and with no version number on it, because we just did the one version for the Commodore 64, which actually had the editable system messages in. So now I can, as if I'm a normal 64, I load the $8, get a list of what's in the drive, and you've got to go in lowercase to see it, and you can see that I've got the Q and the I programs, and then graphics and demo as a database and a graphics item. So if I load Q, this is both Quill and Illustrator on the same one, but I load Q, 8, 1, we'll load up the Commodore 64 version of the Quill. And this is version A06. There were some versions that had odd errors in them that would have been issued. I'm not sure how many left the factory like that. And a Quill, as you would expect, with its usual inventory. It works very similar to all the others. The difference being, of course, we now have all the system messages being editable, which is what happens in the C-Series Quill, and that was available in the Commodore 64 Quill. So I won't go into detail. We've seen Quill before, but you can go back, use run stop, and we've got it. You can load from disk as well, so disk or take on both of them. So if I load demo, Okay, and I should be able to look up White Spare, 33k. I don't think there's much in this demo. I think it's really more for Illustrator, but there we go. Well, there it is. This is the full demo game. So with the kitchen, the dining room, the cellar. Okay. White Noise and Graphics still being sold. CAD cassette 1 and 2. We'll take a look at those in a minute. So here's obviously Maze Gold and Monk Spare Island with a description of them. Still set in the reverse end poker dice and our hidden city. The adventure games now are classed as all of these with the gold collection all grouped in together in the same livery. Who Would Be King, a simulation. We'll talk about that in now briefly then maybe. I think it's this was one we were sent by David Bayliss. He'd previously advertised in, this is back in February of Personal Computer World. He'd originally advertised it here in the classifieds as, if I can find it, Spectrum King. You rule a medieval English county and have to work to be promoted and become king. On cassette, only £2.50. We redid it. Obviously got Terry Greer to do us a nice cover, and Paul to lay out in the sort of style of our new software, and we started marketing it as you saw in the catalogue. I think this loading screen was done by Hugh. It looks the sort of style he would have done. And for those who are interested, I'll link below. There is a video of, you basically get a lot of instructions. And once the game actually runs, you get the usual stats as you buy and sell grain and things like that. So going back, that was the Who Would Be King. We were noted with selling for $5.95, which was fairly common for software back then. Obviously, we cover the Spectrum and the Commodore 64 version of Quill with some detail, and the White Noise and Graphics, which we covered, and these electronic design. Now, these electronic design programs came from a friend of ours who lived in Barry, Peter Armitage. He was quite a talented engineer, and he'd come up with these programs for the BBC. They're quite highly priced, actually, $14.95. Fairly low volume sales, I believe. So they were a lot simpler covers on them on cassette. We later did more, and we'll cover that in a future episode of them. We did some advertising shots as well of the BBC, which is, I think, is quite a nice shot from back in the day. We're trying to see what it actually says on that screen. But it's our breadboard and the soldering iron and some of our spares. And our little oscilloscope at the time. And, I don't think I've still got that floppy drive. I ran into Peter recently, unfortunately a funeral of another friend of ours, but he was still a fascinating person to talk to with so much he's done in his life. So these programs will be preserved and put somewhere, because I'm sure they're not that common. What else we got in the catalogue? Again, it's more about it, and that's the second one, radio receiver and coil design, which allows you to design, obviously, radio receivers and coil windings. And then we're still selling Dad's Hardware, the amplifier as well. And then educational-wise, we covered it from the Index, Cecil, HAL, Visual Processor, and Tawny's Arithmetic 1. And that's the end of the catalogue. So that was where we sort of started with the episode. I'm just going to cover a couple more articles that were covered in the magazines that came out. Obviously, the gold collection was available on the Commodore 64 as well. One of the things I've got left is a complete sheet, uncut, of the from the printer, of the inlays that were done for it. And you can see all of the 8 games. And one that isn't in the adverts, which we've talked about, The Curse, which is another piece of artwork by Terry Greer. But I don't have many of them, but I do have the original Terry Greer piece that was done for the original of The Curse. So that's a pretty beautiful bit of work. This is typical of what we would have had, and then they'd have been photo reduced down to that image there, which is the one for the Curse. So you can see the original against the ink. That's a nice thing to own and to keep tidy, obviously. For those of you who don't remember this, this would have come out in June, although it's the July 1984 issue of Sinclair User. They came out the month before, so you had them to read during the month on the cover. I don't think we advertised in this issue, and I don't seem to have an original copy of it either, which is surprising. But we did get some coverage of the gold collection, and by definition the quill itself, from Quintin Heath. Is Gilsoft weak quilled, and this is against the critics were saying that a lot of the software generated by the quill are identical in structure. If it's been cloned from another, it's going to be inferior, which has been handwritten. So he wasn't going to look at the quill again, but look at some of the ones gold collection. So he goes through them all, and he covers them all in quite some detail. And I think we probably have an episode itself to play some of these games, because it wouldn't interest everybody to look at them all. Hopefully you've got a flavour for them. He does pick out the unusual one of Spy Plane though, which is done in very much different area, because it's actually it is very different, and it is a very interesting use of the quill, I think. So we would definitely be looking at that one. So the limitations of the quill, he doesn't find any really there. So he says, in the proper hands, the quill produces programs on a par with handwritten commercial programs. The quill is a tool, just as is in BASIC. With skilled use, it can do wonders. So again, a nice cover of for the quill for us. Well, just a rough cut of this video, puts it over 40 minutes. I think we'll cut it off there. Some opportunities for future videos to look at our development systems on the BBC. I want to repair it, and maybe look at how we used Microdrive to develop Illustrator on the Spectrum itself, probably using 2 Spectrums and interface 1s. And obviously we can play through some of the gold collection games, and lots more happened in 1984. So hopefully we can look forward to a chapter 6 maybe by Christmas this year that covers the next 6 months of 40 years ago in the history of Gilsoft. Thanks for joining me. I hope if you stuck it out all the way to the end, I really appreciate it, and we'll see you again soon. I'm Tim Gilbert, and this is my channel on retro computing.